I bet it does sound like there's a mouse back there. Um, Hold on, I'm going to move this camera, which I know is going to be weird. I had just realized it wasn't plugged in. I can't read your chat and do this at the same time. So, all right. I am super excited to be here tonight talking about data collection. Let me find my comments window. Yeah, I had to go live before the Grammys. You know, last year I think I went live during the Super Bowl, so I decided not to do that next week. So, although I might have scheduled a live for that, I might want to look at that in the Academy. Hi, everybody. Hi, Anne. Hi, Samantha and Laura. Laura commented earlier that it sounded like there was a mouse back here. It kind of does. It was me moving my microphone. Denise, it's rainy. Yeah, it's supposed to be rainy here. Hi, Ruth Ann. It's good to see you. Hi, Irma. I'm so glad you guys are here. Tonight, I really wanted to talk about data. You know, I love data. I'm weird. I actually think I have fallen in love with these behavioral data sheets. And it's really kind of a funny story because I created them from data sheets that I've used over the years as part of my behavior programs. So they are definitely something that I've used a lot, and they're something that I'm always looking for an easier way. You know, I ask a lot of teachers, and I recognize that when I'm a consultant. And I want teachers to be successful. And, you know, one of my mottos is I'd rather have a sample of data or an estimate of data that I can rely on than a ton of data that I have no idea if it's accurate or not. So that's kind of what some of the behavioral data sheets get at. And that's one of the things. Hi, Chris, and Denise. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight was to show you them, but I also wanted to share with you some ways that you can take data for behavior that are a little easier than some of the, you know, take a basic frequency count kinds of things. If your behaviors are not happening really frequently, you can definitely count them. Take a counter, take a tally, take whatever works for you, put masking tape on your arm, take a tally that way, and that's fine. But if you have behaviors that are happening repeatedly, that's going to be really, really hard to do. So you're going to want to make sure that you are getting a reliable sample, that you're getting some reliable data, but without having it completely consume you, which I think is one of the hardest things about it. Hi, Kim from Saskatchewan, and Deb Clevin. Nice, glad you're here. So I'm going to share with you, I want to show you, I've got some pictures of them because I think that's the easiest way to do it. And just to kind of show you how they are set up. And that is not supposed to take up the whole screen. Okay, hold on. Sorry. From Boise, welcome, Jan. Welcome, Nakia. So I want to make sure that you guys have ways to, I thought I did this already. Apparently not. I want to make sure that you guys have ways that you can take data in a way that is going to work for you. So take that down in size a little bit. So one of the things that I use pretty frequently, and I actually got the idea from a really great book called Prevent, Teach, Reinforce by Glenn Dunlap, and is looking at using rating scales. And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of rating scales, and there's a few things you can do with them that I absolutely love. One is that you can actually assess the intensity of the behavior, which, as we all know, for some of our students is their biggest issue. So, you know, I could have a student who has 20-minute tantrums, but they're really just fall on the ground and cry. And I could have another student who has, you know, and he has one a day. And I could have another student who has 20 behaviors a day that are, going to hurt him, that are, involve headbanging and things like that. So I could also have a kid who has 20 falling on the ground tantrums a day where he's not going to hurt anybody or himself. And, another kid who does it one time, but he's going to crack his head open. So knowing the severity of the behavior sometimes is really important when we're monitoring our behavior plans, because we want to make sure that we're addressing that as a variable, because sometimes just reducing the frequency isn't enough. If one time it's going to be a really dangerous behavior, it's really important that we know whether or not we're reducing the danger of the behavior or the intensity of the behavior. Is he hurting people? Is he hurting himself? Or is he having more frequent behaviors that are less intense? And I've had that happen with a number of students. I've had a number of students where you look at them, and if you look at the frequency of the data, it looks like they're not getting any better. But all of the staff is like, he's so much better. And you're like, why? Well, the reason often is sometimes it's a problem where they have a plan so they feel better about it. But sometimes it's because the individual's behavior is not as severe. So now he's whining and crying, he's not hitting people, or he's, hitting at people, but he's not making contact as much. The severity of his behavior is not as significant. So one of the things that you can do, and I realized today that I really need to do a whole blog post about this, and then we'll do a live about that as well, is really about how do you make the rating scale, because there's a lot of things you want to do to make sure that it is used accurately. But you can use, say, a 5-point or a 7-point or even a 3-point rating scale to be able to assess, was the behavior mild, was it moderate, or was it severe? And one of the keys is you want to make sure that you're tying it to specific types of things. So you see in this picture, hopefully you see the picture. I think you do. And you should see, mild is a 1. It's not going to be hurting anybody. It's going to be okay. It wasn't disruptive. It's not messing up the class, all those kinds of things. A 3 is moderate. He might hurt himself, so he might be slapping or crying or clearing things off the table or things like that. So they run the risk of hurting somebody, but they're not targeting somebody. And severe is he could really cause harm to other people or himself. So he's biting someone, he's hitting someone repeatedly. And I've had kids that even like the level of the hit factors into this, and we have to describe it. Now, it's useful when you use rating scales to try to make sure that you have the same person doing the rating, or that you have really good inter-rater reliability. Because over time, there's a couple things you want to do. One is, what I see as severe is probably going to be a lot more severe than maybe what you see as severe, because I see really severe kids. That's when I get called in. So, when I see a kid whining, he's not bothering me. So it's not a severe behavior to me, but it might be more disruptive and upsetting to the teacher. That's a big split, but you get the idea. So one of the things that I like to do is make sure that we've got a designated person who's going to be the rater. And then periodically have, is it on your phone, Samantha? Are you on a computer or on the phone? If you're on the computer, you should be able to expand it. Is anybody else having that issue? She's saying that the screenshot is too small and she can't see it on the phone. Yeah. And so you may want to just come back and look at it live. It's also, these examples are also in the preview for the product that I will send out a link to. And so you can always come back and look at it, and you can expand it on the computer, or you can make sure that if you download the preview, you'll see it. Okay, so you want to make sure you've got a regular person who is, a designated person who is taking the data so that you're getting a consistent assessment, but also that periodically somebody else is taking data to check with them. Because over time, their assessments may drift. So you want to make sure about that. So periodically you want to check in, and maybe if a pair has taken the ratings, take the ratings once a week or once every other week, just to see, are we seeing things the same way? When you say he's a 5, do I see him as a 5? And that can be really helpful. So one of the other things that I like about it is that once you get that structure of that scale, you can use it to be able to graph your data. So you can actually track the data over time. And so what you see here is actually a self-graphing data sheet. And so what you do in this particular situation, it's going across dates. So you've got the first 2 weeks on the top, the next 2 weeks on the bottom. So you've got almost a month of data on a sheet. And essentially what you're doing is, circling the rating for that day. Now you can break it down different ways. You could break it down so you did morning and afternoon, and I'm going to show you a couple of other examples as well. So you could rate different parts of the day. You could rate by different classes. You could rate by different types of situations, so that you see if there's a change between situations, so that you make sure that if you had a really bad time in the morning, you're not missing that in the afternoon because the afternoon went so well. So sometimes it's helpful to break it down and not do it for a whole full day. So what I like about this one is you can use it to graph itself. In the packet on my TPT store, it actually comes with a rating scale that is based on one that I've used in research. And then there are blank copies that you can use in PowerPoint to put your own rating scale in. I've also had teachers use this type of scale for the type of day the student had. So just as a general assessment of, is he having a good day or a bad day, as a way of just getting, is it working, is it not? Is he out of control or is he under control? Oops, I'm tapping on the wrong thing. Okay, so this is another example where you're going to see graphing. So I love self-graphing. It's my favorite thing in the world. And what you've got in this one is you've got the behavior rating scale of, I think it's a 3-point scale up at the top. And then if you've got less than 15 behaviors happening during the day, you can actually take a frequency count as a possibility. And sometimes I'll take that frequency count in masking tape on my arm or my leg, or I'll just have a tally counter and then I'll come and circle the number. What you see here is I often put tallies over the numbers as the behaviors occur and then circle the highest number. I can then graph my frequency and you can see that, wow, he's getting really much better. And I can graph my severity. So it's all in one place. Now, obviously, if you have more than 15 behaviors happening every day, this data sheet's not going to work. It's just not going to fit on the page. But I have some other options for that. So again, this one comes with the scale written in, and without, you can make changes to it. Okay, so this one you see there's 2 options. One is an intensity and a rating and an interval scale. So, nope, I'm sorry. They're 2 different, forgive me. They're 2 different intensity and frequency scales. So again, I'm going up to 15 and then 3. So this is similar to the one I just showed you. And then this one is an intensity and frequency where you start at the bottom, and you can do it one of 2 ways. You could color in or X off each block every time a behavior happens and not use the intensity piece of it. Or you could put your intensity rating in your, sorry. I'm actually trying to make it bigger, but it's not working. You can actually make it so that it is graphing itself. So it makes a bar graph, and you can put the numbers in the boxes so that you can then go back and factor them out. So rating scales are just a really simple way of taking some data, of making sure that you're getting some reliable estimates of what is going on. Let me double check and make sure that I am showing you the right thing. Okay. So here you've got the interval and intensity scale. So what this one is interval data is when we take data for specific intervals. It might be, in this case, I think it's a 15-minute segment. So 7:45 to 8 o'clock. And I'm taking partial interval data, but you can take different types. Partial interval data is just, did the behavior occur at all during those 15 minutes? I might use activities if they're all similar length. So I've done interval schedules with schedules before. So 15-minute blocks across the day. And then in this case, whenever a behavior occurs in the interval, the staff rate it. And you can actually track up to 3 behaviors and you can define them. You circle the ones that occur in that interval and then you rate it. If you're using partial interval, how many of you are familiar? Give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with interval data or have ever used interval data in your classroom. Hi, Boo. So interval data is essentially when you're just checking to see if something is happening. Now, a partial interval will give you an overestimate of the behavior, but that's good for behavior. If I think it's happening more than it is, I'm erring on the right side. And so what you see on the left, which I know is really small, is a full day, a full week of data where it won't graph itself, but each interval, I just circled, did the behavior happen or not? And then I rate those behaviors if they did happen. And then I can put them into a graph. The one on the right was one that we used for a preschool guy who is all over the place. And so one of the things that the staff said was, there's just no way we can even quantify some of his behaviors. They're just so unusual. And so one of the things that we did was we created a rating scale where, a 1 is that, there were really no problems. A 2 was he just was off task and not following directions. And a 3 was he was aggressive. So those were kind of the stages that we saw with this kid. And so that was how we operationalized them. So they were behaviors we could actually observe, that somebody gave him a direction, he actively would not follow it. He actually would run away. And then they would just indicate whether during that interval there was a meltdown or not, because that was another big thing for him. And then that just gave us a sense of whether or not his behavior was improving. Now, all of this is done after an FBA has been done, after we've written a behavior plan. We're using these to monitor their behavior plans. Okay, so another way you can take data is to take scatter plot data. Scatter plot data is when we write down when something occurs during a certain activity or during a certain time of day. So it's a little different than interval data in that it's not specific intervals, and sometimes we do use it for FBAs, but it's a really nice way sometimes to know where your problems are happening. So those of you who might go into other people's classrooms to do observations, you may find that having them do a scatter plot ahead of time can be helpful to know when you should go observe, when you're most likely to see behaviors. And there are a number in this packet, there are a number of different examples. And one of the ones that I like is the one that has you tracking behavior problems or target behaviors, as well as appropriate behaviors or replacement behaviors. Because sometimes it's surprising to find out how many times the students are actually exhibiting appropriate behaviors, but the negative behaviors are still happening. It's also useful. So he's raising his hand and waiting to be called on, but maybe nobody's calling on him, so it's not working. So then our problem isn't that he doesn't know how to ask for attention appropriately. It's that the way he has to ask is not being effective. But when he clowns around and stands on his desk, then people attend to him. So it's useful to know both the positive and the negative that are going on in his environment. And a scatter plot is an easy way to do that because you're not trying to track every single behavior. You're just trying to get a sense of when and where the behaviors are occurring. And so there's a number of different examples or different formats in here. You can write in what the target behaviors are, the replacement behaviors are. There are some that follow a whole 10-minute interval day without the replacement behavior. So there's, I think, like 6 different options for this, and you can edit them in PowerPoint. You can edit everything that are in the boxes. The boxes stay the same. Interval data, which I've talked about, this is just a straight interval form. So every 10 minutes, did the behavior happen or not? And are we taking partial? Are we taking whole, which means it has to happen for the whole interval? Or are we taking momentary? These are really useful in the classroom where you just can't concentrate on one student all day, but you're going to know if a behavior happened and you can write it on the form at the right time. So you're just going to have to check off a box instead of having to write out an ABC or instead of having to, track the frequency and things like that. Okay, then we go on to ABC forms. And ABC forms I've done for so many years in so many different ways. And you guys probably have a ton of them. If you are interested, I'm going to show you a checkoff form in just a minute. But if you want to type free data sheet, FREEDATA sheet, SHEET, into the comments, it will send you a free checkoff form that you can use. It actually comes from my pack on TPT. And if you'll have to reply and tell it that yes, you really do want that. Just type in the comments, free data sheet, and then it will pop up, go to your messenger will pop up a messenger. You'll have to type in free data sheet again, and then it will send you a freebie. So this one is just a way of my being able to get a rating scale of how is he doing today. Are there issues that are going on that might be affecting his behavior that make it worse? He had a fight with his brother before school, and then what happened before, during, and after. How many people familiar with ABC forms? I'm guessing they're not new to people. But one of the hard parts about a form like this is that you have to actually go and write things in. It doesn't have to be one word. Make it all 3 words, Christina. So free data sheet, 3 words. Sorry, Misty. Sorry, I shouldn't have spelled it. I think that screwed us up. And then let me know if it doesn't work. Hopefully my little bot will work because it works without me. It worked earlier. And let me know if it does work because otherwise I'll go back and make sure you guys get them. I'm so cool with the bots. Yeah, the bots, they're great when they work. So here's the issue with this kind of sheet. One is I can only put one incident on a behavior, behavior. Don't type it as all one word. Type it as 3 different words. So free space data space sheet. Sorry, I confused that issue. So you have to write everything down, which is great when you're doing an FBA, but it's not so great when you're actually just trying to monitor a behavior or a set of behaviors because you just don't have time to write everything down. So once I get an idea about what is going on, then my bot is smarter than I think, according to Laura. Awesome. Once I get an idea of what's going on with this richer data, then I can make simpler data. And I'm actually going to show you that because I don't think I actually got it here. So I'm going to go back to just me. And I'm going to show it to you here. Yeah, Lauren's got it. So if you want the free ABC checkoff data sheet, just type it in the comments, just like Lauren did. Okay, so there are a number of different kinds. One of the things that I like, this is good. Is this not backwards? That's a good thing. This is a checkoff data sheet that I use. And so I use some that are whole sheets. I'll have to find my example of that one. And then I've also created them so that you can print them in cards that you can put in your pocket. Yeah. So here's one that's a whole page. I have a hard time because that goes backwards for me. So here I can get 2 instances on a page. But I have to keep it on clipboard. I have to keep it somewhere where I'm going to be able to access it readily. I have to carry it with me if we move to another part of the school, things like that. So that becomes an issue. So that's useful because I have it all in one place. And so essentially all it is, oops, I went back to the old one, didn't I? So all it is I've taken the data and done my antecedent, my behavior, my consequence. There are a few extra boxes I've added in Sometimes I want to know, did the behavior stop when they use that consequence? And how severe the behavior was becomes useful. So, and are there other things like he doesn't feel well today that are going to play a role with whether or not it's successful? Once I know what goes in these boxes, all they have to do is check them off. So I need to kind of know what's going to go in them. The one that I've given you free is actually, the one that I've given you free is a generic one. It's actually a generic one I made for RTI on my blog, and I'm going to put a link. I'm going to send everybody a set of links for blog posts. I just did a collection of my blog posts on data collection, so you'll have those. And so if you're getting the free data sheet, I'm going to message you later tonight with a link to download some other freebies that are on my site. And so it's just a way of, once I know this information, I can put it in here. The one you're getting is different than the one that's on my blog, which is more self-contained autism-y kinds of problems, whereas the one that you're getting today is more general. I use it a lot. I used it for RTI, so it's got some more general kinds of behaviors. Within the packet that is in my TPT store, you actually can add in your own, here's a good example. There are directions about how to print them as index card size, so just print them on cardstock. And then you can type in your own options. So I made it so that you can make it, you can use the ones that are already there. I think there's 3 or 4 options. And then there are some that you can type your own options into. And then there's one that's just, you know, a basic journal. And the nice thing about being able to print them on cards, this was actually Laura's idea that I'd never really thought about, although there are a couple out there, is that I can actually put them in my pocket with a pencil, and I have them where I need to go. So those are just some ways that make it easy, I hope, easier to collect data, that make things a little simpler, especially once you've done your FBA. So the ABC data I use to do my functional behavior assessment. The other data sheets I use to monitor my behavior plans. The rating scale, in addition to using it, how many people here, give me a thumbs up if you use the Incredible 5-point scale. The Incredible 5-point scale is a great self-monitoring system, and that's another advantage of rating scales, is that you can actually, this is the one without the intensity rating, put in here, you can actually have the students monitor their 5-point ratings morning and afternoon, which is the way I do it a lot for check-in, check-out for some of my kids. And then they can graph it themselves and see how well they're monitoring and how well they're dealing with their frustration, their anxiety. I made one an anxiety scale because I just recently had a little girl with a lot of anxiety. I don't have the anxiety one with me. But it's a really just easy way for them to do some self-monitoring. So it's a way to actually move some of your data off of your plate and onto theirs. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, so now I want to open it up to questions. What questions do you guys have? What are the challenges that you see? I will be having, there will be a set of instructional data sheets coming out in the next few weeks. I got a bunch of stuff going on, but as soon as I get past some of that, these are on TPT, and I will put the link up. I'll also message anybody who's on the messenger mailing list to send you the link to those. If you downloaded the free data sheet, you actually got a link to the TPT site as part of it. I think it should have come right after. They are there. There's a video link that shows you how you can edit them in PowerPoint and how you can print them in smaller sizes so you can make them index cards or whatever works for you. There will be instructional data sheets that are coming to my store in the next few weeks. I'm working on those, and These are all different than the ones that are in my Taming the Data Monster book. Now, Wendy asked a really good question. And I just screwed up my... Okay. Wendy asked the question, how many are these available for members? If you are in the Special Educator Academy, because we are in the Taming the Data Monster course period, I went ahead and I'm making these and the instructional ones free as part of the Academy. I've made them part of the handout for the Taming the Data Monster course. So just know that everything I put in my TPT store will not be free in the Academy, but when it relates to a course, I want you to have the tools that you can use to be successful. Let me also say that the data sheets that are on TPT are different than the ones in my Taming the Data Monster book. So the book still has a lot of other data sheets that I can't sell, I can't use commercially. So some of these are similar. Some of them actually are data sheets that we used in the book, that we have permission for the book, but I can't use any other way. I've modified them and used them over time, and they've kind of become my own. So I've created similar things that I use instead. So those are included. So if you are a member of the Special Educator Academy, these are available in the community and in the Taming the Data Monster course. Don't buy them. So I'm assuming, Wendy, when you said, are they available to members, that's what you meant. How many days of data do you take for an FBA? It completely depends on the situation. Some situations I can do an FBA in a day. Some situations I need a week of data or two or more. Sometimes I write a behavior plan and we keep taking the data for the FBA. So it just depends on how complex the behavior is, how strong the data collectors are, and just how complex the environment is to determine what we need to do for them. I'm sorry, I don't, unfortunately, there's no set answer for that one. Okay, Misty says, if you have a student who's non-compliant, would you track instances or duration? That's a good question. If you have a student who is non-compliant but eventually gets around to doing it, then maybe I would track duration, or what I would probably call latency, before he starts the task. The hard part with that is that with duration, you've got to sit there and actually time how long it happens, which if you didn't see the beginning, or you can't watch to the end, or there's other stuff going on, sometimes becomes hard. Now, if you've got a dedicated person taking data or working with the student, then that might work. I probably would take instances, but it also depends on what it is I need to know. If you find that you're taking data on instances and they're getting better, like he's following directions more frequently, but when he doesn't follow directions, it's taking him longer to come back from a problem, then I might start to look at some duration issues. And if you have students who have behaviors like tantruming or crying or screaming, duration may be an element that you want to put in there. You can get an estimate of duration by using an interval data sheet, but it won't give you the true duration. But it does kind of tell you, yes, his bouts are getting shorter or longer. It just doesn't give you the exact amount of time. So that's an excellent question, because when you go to take data, the first thing you've got to think about is, what is my question? What is it that I need to know to decide if this behavior is getting better? And that needs to be part of your behavior plan as well. Okay. Lauren says, my challenge is not finding the trend in behavior data for one of her students. It's very inconsistent, but it's the same behaviors. One of the things that you may want to do, and I can't say that it will or will not solve this problem, but a lot of times you will see students that people will say, there's no pattern to his data. He's different every day. Or even that sometimes the teacher will say, I know when it's going to be a bad day. I know when it's going to be a good day. I just don't know why. So when I talked about that data sheet, my ABC data sheet that had my rating scale on it, and even some of my checkoff forms have this. One of the things that I try to get at is, how is he today? Like, what's his overall sense? And are there any events? Is he easily agitated? Did he not sleep well? Are there other things that might play a role in his not being able to manage today? Because chances are pretty good that if you're getting very inconsistent data and you're getting some days you give him math and he's fine, some days you give him math and he's a mess, it's probably because there's something involved called setting events. And setting events are things that set somebody up for problems down the line that didn't happen right now. So you don't get to see them maybe even in your classroom. So he had a fight with a kid on the bus, and that's the day he's having a hard time. He had a fight with his brother, and that's the day he's having a hard time. He didn't sleep well. I had a kid that the setting event was even more complex. It was he didn't sleep well, and mom was too tired to stay up and play with him. So the first night he didn't sleep well, he came into school and he was fine. The second night he didn't sleep well, mom was tired, mom didn't stay up and play with him all night. He was a mess and he would self-injure. So you want to start going back in time a little bit and get some ideas about what other bigger things might be affecting the behavior on some days than on others. Is he hungry? Is he tired? Is he sick? Those kinds of things, because those may be affecting the behavior. I'm not wearing the right shoes today. My collar on my shirt is driving me crazy. I've had it be things that he's wearing or things that he has or doesn't have. So it might be something like that. So you may want to go through and look at some broader variables that might be affecting the behavior and see if you see a pattern within those times. I don't know if that'll solve the problem, but it might be worth a shot. Okay, Beth says, I have a student with multiple behaviors: spitting, yelling, elopement, destruction of property. I would say that you have to look at the function of the behavior. So I would really be looking at ABC data. And when I take ABC data, I include all the behaviors that happen. So there doesn't have to be just one. So I might have 5 behaviors that get checked on my ABC form. So the more information that you have, the better. Now, if you're trying to monitor a behavior plan that's in place, I would look, instead of looking at the form of the behavior, I look at the function of the behavior. So based on your FBA, do all of the behaviors that he's having happen for the same function? Does he hit to get people to go away? And does he scream to get people to go away? Or does he hit to get people to go away? And does he scream to get people to attend to it? And then I would take different data if it's a different function. So I determine based on function more than form what kind of data I want. Also, do all the behaviors happen together or do they happen at separate times? Because then you might want to know where it's happening in a scatter plot. Might be useful to know we see more hitting at recess and we see more cursing in math. So that might give you some information that you need to know. Okay. Any resources on analyzing data? Yes, and making sense of it. We actually, in the Special Ed Academy, we have a whole course and there's a whole module, which is where we're at right now with our study group on analyzing data. And I actually, because of that, just updated an Excel data sheet that I use for instructional data to take data. I updated the video. So I am going to put that up on YouTube in the next week or so to have that information. So in the if you're in the academy, there is the Taming the Data Monster course. There's a whole section on graphing. There is also an entire set of posts on my blog that I'll send out a link to that talk about ABC data and graphing your FBA data. So that's how it kind of walks you through the kinds of things that I look at when I analyze my data to figure out how to graph what I want to graph. And then I usually just use simple bar charts for that. And then I try to use as many self-graphing data sheets as I can to graph progress. Analyzing the data, there's actually, I know I've got a post on analyzing instructional data. I know I have a series of posts of analyzing behavior data. So I will send those links out tonight as well. So make sure if you're on my mailing list, just even if you don't want the free data sheet, just write free data sheet and then you'll get the follow-up email that'll have all those links. Donna says, start with all the behaviors and then look at behaviors that have the same functions. Yeah, then I would start to just group in my data collection the behaviors that have the same function. So if these set of behaviors happen mostly to gain attention and these set of behaviors happen mostly to escape, then I would consider them one functional group. And then I wouldn't take data on individual behaviors unless I need to know how many times he bit somebody else versus how many times he hit the teacher or something like that. So hopefully that gives you some idea. All right. You guys have been awesome. I'm so glad that you're here. The module that you watched on analyzing data went right over your head. All right. I'm thinking of doing a live later this week in the Academy for the study group. Because I think analyzing the data is one of the hardest things that we do. You understand all my words, but when you try to put them together, they don't make sense. I get that. It's a matter of doing it, which is also what we want to do in the Academy. So in the study group. So that is something that we're going to walk through. But really all you need to do is look at the decision rules that Browder has and kind of walk through those. That's a good one. A little taste of how the students feel all day long. I know. It takes a while, but first get the data, then bring it to the group, and we'll look at it, and we'll figure it out. And I am still working on a problem behavior checklist that may be available on TPT in the future. Not a problem behavior checklist, a problem solving checklist for data so that you can analyze it and check things off. And I'm still, the more I get into it, the bigger it gets. So I'm still working on that, and hopefully, Laura, that will help you. All right, guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday night, and I hope to see you again in a week or so. All right, everybody have a good night.